Welcome. In this video for Chapter 10, we're going to discuss the differences between the different types of long-term memory, emphasizing the differences between implicit and explicit memory, and hopefully by the end you'll have your own personal example of each type of these long-term memories. We're going to start off talking about the differences between implicit and explicit memory. Implicit memory is the influence of something that you've recently experienced on your behavior without really realizing that one is using that memory. Like maybe you saw a TV commercial for a certain brand of soda, and then you go to the store and you buy that brand because of that commercial, but you're not thinking about that commercial. It's not like the forefront of your memory. You're not actually thinking about it, but it influences your behavior. So it's something that's unconscious or automatic, something that you're not thinking about that's influencing you. We're going to talk about procedural memories, which are just one type of implicit memory, and it's going to be an action or a skill that you've learned in the past that then becomes automatic. You don't have to think about all the different things you need to do that action or skill. Explicit memory, on the other hand, is really what most people think about when they think about memory. It's the deliberate recall of information that you recognize as a memory. Whether it's what you did last weekend with your friends, what you did for your birthday last year, or learning about implicit and explicit memory in class. So there's a conscious, intentional recollection of memory. You're aware that you're remembering something. You're aware that you're recalling something. And those are going to be declarative memories. And you'll see we're going to differentiate two different types of declarative memories, semantic memories and episodic memories. So we're going to continue this color coding when we talk about these different types of long-term memories that I did introduce to you on the last slide. So first we're going to talk about procedural memories. So procedural memories are going to be an action or a skill. It's something that you've learned how to do that you just don't think about anymore. So if you think about something like walking, right? That seems easy. You just walk across the room because you want to walk across the room, right? Well, think about everything that has to go into a baby learning how to walk across that room, right? First they start crawling. And that might not seem like it's part of walking, but that's learning how to move their legs to get from one place to another. And then at some point they start kind of standing up on the furniture and what we call cruising along, right? They use the furniture to help balance themselves, but they're learning to move their feet to get from one place to another. Then at some point, they'll start just standing up in the middle of the room. Because you think about walking involves moving your feet, but also balance, right? And moving your feet in the right direction. So then they start standing up. Well, they also have to figure out how to get back down without just falling, right? So then at some point you see them, they're standing up, their core is getting stronger, and then they take a step. And then they probably fall. And then maybe the next day they get up and they stand up again, and they take a couple of steps. So again, when we walk, we don't think about all those things that we learned to do. So that's a procedural memory. And since those memories are not actively being recalled, it is implicit. Declarative memory, on the other hand, is I declare that I know something. And we're going to distinguish two types of declarative memories. So declarative memories can be a semantic memory. So a semantic memory is going to be a rule, a fact, or a concept. A rule like I before E except after C. Concept, a dog has a tail, 2 ears, it barks, it's soft, it likes to lick. That's a concept of a dog. Episodic memory is actually what most people really think about when they think about memory, but it is going to be a personal experience, kind of like a personal episode in your own life, right? That's what I like to use to help people remember as an episodic, like an episode on TV. It's a personal episode in your own life. It's something you've personally experienced. Again, what you did last weekend, your 10th birthday party, your high school graduation, the first time you learned how to drive. All of those are personal experiences. So again, procedural memories are implicit. It's an action or skill that you've learned, but you don't have to think about all those details when you're doing that action or skill. So it's a procedure and it's implicit. It's unconscious. We're unconscious of that memory, but we can still do that action or skill. Declarative memories are explicit. We are consciously recalling that fact, rule, or concept, or we're consciously recalling personal experiences. Now, I'd like you to kind of take a minute and think about an example for yourself. I'm going to give you some more examples on the next slide, but that's going to be part of one of your assignments, is not just defining these types of memory, telling me if they're implicit or an explicit, but also coming up with your own personal example. And I don't want you to just say driving a car. I want you to say, the first time my dad took me out driving in the Golden West parking lot. Like, that's the type. I want you to really associate these terms with previous memories, because that's going to strengthen your memory for these terms. So again, procedural memory is an action or skill. Think about riding a bike. Again, if you know how to ride a bike, you just hop on and you ride, and you cannot ride a bike for 5-10 years. And when you hop back on, that procedural memory is still there. You don't have to think about all the things that you originally learned to ride a bike, but they're there. And if you're thinking, well, it's not too complicated to ride a bike, think about how long it takes a kid to ride a bike. First, maybe when they're around 3, they get a tricycle, right? There's 3 wheels. It's low to the ground, and they have to figure out how to get those pedals to go around, to keep going, so they can go in one direction. And trust me, if you've ever seen a kid try to learn this, it's not easy. And then once they get those pedals moving, they have to also steer, right? So they don't run into things. So then at some point you graduate and you move up to a bike with training wheels. I mean, now they have some other options too, like the bikes that you just don't have any pedals and things like that. But I'm talking about the traditional way to learn how to ride a bike. So then you have a bike with training wheels, and now you're pedaling in an upright position. You're still having to steer the bike, and you have those training wheels so that you are learning how to balance. You start to fall over, you feel that, you correct yourself. And then at some point you're ready to get rid of the training wheels, but now you have to learn how to start and stop the bike. And all of that is a lot, but your body eventually has a procedural memory of that, and it becomes something that's implicit. So semantic memory, we said, is a rule factor concept. And one example might be if you were bird watching and you know the different, you have a concept of what a bird is, and you know what different types of birds are. You know the robin has a red chest. And that's really about my limitation on my bird knowledge. Another example might be something from class, knowing what the definition of classical conditioning is. Or again, knowing the definition of what a procedural memory is, or a declarative memory. Episodic memories, we said, are personal experiences. So maybe the time you got married, or here is one of my personal experiences, the time that we went on a family trip to Morro Bay. It was many years ago. My kids were much smaller then, but I love this memory. And again, procedural memories are implicit. Like once you learn how to do that skill or that action, you don't have to think about all those things in order to perform that action or skill. So it's an unconscious memory influencing your behavior. Declarative memories are explicit. You are consciously recalling that fact, rule, or concept, or you're consciously recalling that personal episode of your own life. So there will be a Kahoot in the module that you can play to test your understanding of these different types of long-term memory. Again, you'll be applying this information in an assignment, and then in the next video, we'll be talking about what areas of the brain are involved in these different types of memory.